The fourth and final GOP presidential debate has finally come to a head, and with it, we see that now we go to the Iowa caucuses. Well, what happened? Vivek Ramaswamy once again dominating every single one of these neocon establishment hacks, goose-stepping his way across the stage and bullying all of these political clowns into submission. Very much filling the boots of what Donald Trump used to do. I really enjoyed it, not for the nature of political and presidential debates being incredibly interesting. They completely avoid nuance many of the times, and people just talk past each other to try and get sound bites. But what I loved was putting these people in their place, because I despise the political class. So what I really, really love is people like Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump being battering rams to bust open the Overton window so we can shift it to actually having conversations about things that matter, things that people really want to talk about, that are detached from the narrative that is approved by the corporate press and the establishment ethos. Let's go ahead and jump into this. Vivek dusting Nikki Haley, dusting Ron DeSantis, and dusting Chris Christie, once again showing that these people are nothing more than hawks and that will gladly send your sons and daughters to go fight and die abroad in these conflicts. And much like Vivek showed, they don't even understand the regions that they would place the boots of your sons and daughters in so that they could go bleed out on the soil of. Let's go ahead and jump in. Before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of what's going on with Vivek just dominating this entire debate, I want to go ahead and talk about Nikki Haley. And first, we'll be starting this off with a tweet from Jack Posobiec. Vivek ended Nikki Haley's entire national career tonight like Tucker ended Pence's at that forum. She's done. It will take some time for her to accept it, but it's true. There's no coming back from this. And yeah, that's absolutely true. I wonder how long it'll take the donors to realize that. And now we go on to this tweet from Nikki Haley. I dealt with Iran every day at the United Nations, and it only responds to strength. You've got to punch them hard. Go after the infrastructure in Iraq where they're hitting American soldiers. So she wants to go again and send more soldiers abroad, which we should be bringing them home. But nonetheless, this is one of the people who is perfectly okay with having the over 800 military bases that we have abroad and wants to build more and more and more. Well, what do we see? This is the pathing that Nikki Haley has taken through Boeing, and with it then into that of the presidential race in 2024. 2009. Supports $900 million for a Boeing facility as a state legislator. 2011, Boeing contributes $25,000 to Haley's governmental inauguration. 2013, signs a $120 million grant for Boeing as a governor. 2017, opposes Boeing union organization efforts as a governor. 2019, accepts Boeing board seat. 2020, resigns Boeing board seat. 2022, hints at 2024 presidential run. 2023, announces 2024 presidential run. I'm sure there's absolutely nothing going on here, and this would not be a person who's just advocating for the talking points of the military-industrial complex. No. Nikki Haley certainly doesn't sound like that every single time she talks about any conflict, whether it be China, Iran, Russia, Israel, and Palestine. No, she certainly doesn't sound like a bloodthirsty war hawk that just wants to make sure that we're expanding the empire abroad. That would be ridiculous. Here we have this clip of Nikki Haley, and now let's get into it. Nikki Haley says she will change the definition so every government, every school has to acknowledge that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. She then claims every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic. Where are you getting these numbers? Oh, of course, it's because you don't actually have any data for this. This is just some focus group tested talking point that you had, and they were like, this one works best, we run with this one. So they use it, and what do we see? Changing the definition of language? Well, that's what the left does. That's what they've done consistently for the past 70 years. I thought you were someone on the America First conservative right, which, as we see, many people who claim to be America First or just Israel First within the political landscape. That's a conversation for a different day. But what we do see here is she's saying, well, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And that's not true at all. Anti-Zionism is against the ethno-state project of what was desired by that of people like Theodor Herzl in the 1880s, which the original Zionist project being a response to the pogroms of the 1800s and the hundreds of years before that with the persecution of the Jewish people when they were just being slaughtered and maimed endlessly. And what happened was they came to the mindset that we just simply can't live like this. And that is what ended up leading to the process that created the Zionist project that then founded the state of Israel through the British Mandate of Palestine in 47, that then led to the Nakba in 48, that then pushed out so many of these Palestinian Arabs from their lands who are Semites. So Nikki Haley claiming the fact that if you're saying anything about anti-Zionism, it's anti-Semitic, well, here's the deal. The Arabs who live in this land, just like the Jewish people, are Semites. So you can even be anti-Semitic against the Muslims in the region. But people like Nikki Haley don't even understand that, and if they do, they'll never even talk about it because they use anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism as a corollary because they want to beat you over the head with the stick of morality. These people don't even understand the history of what created the Zionist project in Israel, and with it, they will gladly sit there and tell you you're the bad person because you don't support them wanting to control language.
Including the president of Harvard, were asked whether calling for the genocide of the Jews would violate school policies against harassment and intimidation. All of them said it would depend on the context, including whether that speech veers into conduct. How do you think these schools and the rest of society should balance the imperative of free speech against the need to prevent radical activists from harassing and intimidating others?
It was disgusting to see what happened. You know, if this had been the KKK that was doing protests on those campuses, every one of those college presidents would have been up in arms. This is just as bad. The idea that they would go and allow that kind of pro-Hamas protest or agree with the genocide of Jews and try and say that they needed context on that, there is no context to that. This is what we need to do to deal with it. First of all, we have got to get foreign money out of our universities. You've got Arab money, you've got Chinese money, you've got others. We need to go to every university and say you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. The second thing we need to do is Biden made a mistake not including anti-Zionism in the definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't think that Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitic. We will change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge the definition for what it is. The third thing is we really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that.
Nikki Haley just the absolute worst, but nonetheless, what we see is she does have a kernel of truth to her argument, and it's the fact that we can't just have these explosive bouts of rhetoric talking about these horrible things that correlate with doing awful, awful shit to Jewish people. Because the thing is, this is something that's happened consistently throughout history, and you shouldn't promote it now. Back in the times of what was going on during Eastern Europe's massive crusades against the Jewish people, what would happen is there would be a famine that would come through, or there would be a blight, there wouldn't be rain that would give the crops, and with it they would accuse the Jewish people of practicing black magic, and they would just beat them and slaughter them in mass. And this happened for generations, and this is what led to the Zionist project of Israel. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on from that. We'll go ahead and jump into Vivek Ramaswamy's clips. What we see here from Vigilant Fox. Vivek stole the show with a fourth GOP presidential debate performance that was absolutely stellar. The debate kicked off with a discussion of U.S. involvement in Ukraine. During the segment, Ramaswamy questioned Nikki Haley's basic geographical knowledge, which nullified her into a blank stare. Look at that! She has no idea what the hell the names of those Ukrainian provinces are, but she will gladly send your sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight in it. And that's true. She will gladly send your sons and daughters to go die in that conflict and come home draped in the casket so you can cry over their corpse. That is the people who are in charge of the American foreign policy establishment right now. People like Nikki Haley, who wield this mindset that only care about the process of expanding the neoliberal world order. Let's go ahead and jump into this clip of Vivek.
So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there, the donors right there that are playing her like the puppet masters.
Hold on.
Into the dustbin of history goes Nikki Haley's career, Vivek handling that like a masterclass, and what we see is many of the people within the foreign policy establishment and the upper brass of many of the governments of the world and organizations like the UN, well, they don't actually understand the nuance of many of the things that are needed to know when it comes to the nature of dealing with all of the ordeals that will rise up when you're trying to actually exert power over specific regions, because as we can see from people like Nikki Haley, they don't even understand the regions with which they're willing to send your sons and daughters to go fight and die in, so they can go bleed out on soil that is stained with so many generations of blood that you couldn't get it out of the fucking ground if you glassed it with a nuke. And what do we see? Nikki Haley, blank stare, unable to respond because she has absolutely nothing. Nothing of substance. It's always just these small little platitudes, because that's all politicians work on, is the small soundbite culture. But guess what? The age of that is dead. And with it, now we can see that there's really people challenging to push the Overton window so we can have real conversations about real things that matter, and attacking the people within the political landscape who absolutely deserve it. Say No to Neocons was a fantastic push from Vivek Ramaswamy, and with it, we can see he's sticking true to it. Now into this tweet from Jeremy Kauffman. Vivek is forcing the conversations on 1/6, the deep state, free speech and big tech, immigration and demographics. Even if Vivek isn't your guy, every Republican should want him in the race. And that's absolutely true. Vivek is pivotal to the nature of shifting the conversation right now, because what we see is once you start to talk about certain things that have been obfuscated from the field of debate, well, you can see that there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And we can see this with what happened with immigration. We can see it with what's going on with monetary policy. And you can certainly see it with how the America First conservative base has been activated against that of the foreign policy establishment that are willing to go send their family members and everyone they know and love to go perish in many of these different conflicts solely on the standard of flicking over the chess piece to take one more place, because we have to expand the metrics of the world empire just one more inch. Now let's go ahead and get into this.
All three of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements. Ron DeSantis, you've been a great governor, but you would have never been one without actually begging Donald Trump for that endorsement.
And you attacked him in your book a year ago.
Same thing with Chris Christie as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates last time around. These people are now Monday morning quarterbacking some decision he made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech. That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false. There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking him and criticizing him when it's convenient.
Man, I'll be honest. When I first heard him give that, I kind of paused for a moment. I was like, oh, you just bit a lot of sacred cows, my friend. That's going to be a major blow in the press, which is going to be interesting because it's only going to make people talk about him more, and it's going to give me more things to think about. Because realistically, when you look over and it pans and you can see what's going on with Chris Christie, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley, every time Vivek's going off, they're just squirming. And I love seeing politicians squirm. It gets me off. And the thing that I absolutely adore with this is they don't know what's coming next. He could hit him with absolutely anything because he's outside the spectrum of allowable opinion and they have no idea how to counter it. That's why Nikki Haley had no ability to actually go off and tell you those provinces in Ukraine, because she didn't know anything. Because these people don't know shit about anything. They know their talking points, and I guarantee you, they've memorized a lot of them, so you know what? Maybe they do know something. They know how to go ahead and coach you through a lie so they can deliver you to the establishment's desires. Now what do we have next? We go on to Vigilant Fox, and here we see Ramaswamy's debate performance escalated when he accused Nikki Haley of corruption while holding a sign that said, "Nikki equals corrupt." He charged, "Nikki, I don't have a woman problem, you have a corruption problem, and I think that's the problem needed to know right now by the American people. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house." And she is just deadpan stare, deer in the headlights, just locked, looking forward, because she knows he's got her beat. There is no getting around this, and with it, as I've stated, I love watching the politicians squirm. Thank you, Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's go ahead and play this clip.
Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party. It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you.
Alrighty, what do we see? He starts off with the fact of hitting Nikki Haley on she's playing identity politics, and this is what the right has been fighting against consistently because the left has been using it as a cudgel to beat them down, and we see that this is what you're using to run your campaign. People cheer that on about the fact that Vivek is stomping on her for using identity politics. She goes right back into robot mode. And one thing I absolutely adore about this, as I've already stated, is he's outside the spectrum of allowable opinion. And that means he can hit them with so many different forms of blows that they have no ability to see coming. You can consider it like this in boxing. All the establishment has the ability to counter when it comes to the nature of a presidential debate is a jab. That's it. They can handle a jab. But if you throw an uppercut, if you throw a hook, they're doomed. They have no ability to counter this because they have not been preconditioned to understand how to do so. And with this, Vivek understands it excellently. And what else does he understand? He understands something that Andrew Breitbart talked about, that politics is downstream from culture. And what is culture? Well, it's internet culture currently, and it's made of meme warfare. I know that might sound ridiculous, but it's true. What is the most popular form of comedic, let's say, entertainment online right now? Well, it's just people doom scrolling through the internet and looking at memes. And that is what is going on with the current culture. And with it, Vivek actively understands this, or at least I believe he does. And he's now firmly placed himself in the culture by holding up the sign that says Nikki equals corrupt. Because when he did so, he gave the internet a meme template. And they will run that thing into the ground. And they will gladly use it over and over and over again. And with it, what do they have to do with it? They just have to edit it out and make it a white square so people can post whatever they want. And now we see that Vivek Ramaswamy will have ingrained himself firmly into the zeitgeist that is the cultural landscape. And this will be a major factor for him coming down the line in politics in the future. And what is the future of politics? The younger generation. And who uses so much social media and doom scrolls through memes all the time? The younger generation. Masterfully played by Vivek Ramaswamy. And now what do we see? Vivek says, you could put a lipstick on Dick Cheney is still a fascist neocon. Grilling Nikki Haley once again, and then going on to smoke Chris Christie like the pig that he is. Absolutely adore it. Let's throw it into this clip.
So first of all, I think we just learned something from Chris Christie. We learned 3 things. We learned 3 things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York. Yeah. So do everybody a favor. Just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal, and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to actually send your sons and daughters to go die in somebody else's war, you better, excuse me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet.
I haven't heard a time when you aren't
and we're going to be
speaking.
done. So listen up to this. Is if these people want to send your sons and daughters to go die in Ukraine, they've been arguing for it for a year. $200 billion of our taxpayer money sent over. Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect. And this is the people who have been touting their so-called foreign policy experience. It is intellectual fraud. These people are lying to you, the same people who told you about weapons and mass destruction in Iraq. To justify that invasion, didn't know the first thing about it, yet they sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die. The same people who told you the same in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. $7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons. You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney, it is still a fascist neocon.
Thank
and
you,
you
Mr.
gotta see that today.
Thank you, Mr.
It's Dick Cheney all over again in this party.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy.
It doesn't matter if you put lipstick on Dick Cheney. In the end of the day, that is still just a fascist neocon. Vivek, well done, man. Just putting Nikki Haley firmly in his crosshairs consistently throughout all of these debates. I don't know what it is, if he has a personal slight against this person, or it's the nature of he sees her as everything wrong with what's going on with the conservative base. Everything wrong with Republican politics. Because there's a strong argument to say, yes, that's absolutely true. She is the only person who is consistently and actively and openly, unabashedly, pushing the standards of the Bush-era neocon mindset. The people who only stand for that of the new American century. And what is that? What is the project for a new American century? Well, it was the ideal that after the fall of the Soviet Union, we, the Americans, would be able to dominate that of the world in expanding an empire abroad. And with it, we would actually blow out that of our Monroe Doctrine and expand it to influence so many different countries across the globe. Well, what did that lead to? It led to the point of us being $34 trillion in debt, people suffering to pay for their groceries, homelessness through the roof. We have a fentanyl crisis that's absolutely uncontrollable unless we can get what's going on in the southern border under control. We have to actually address the nature of the veteran suicide epidemic that has befallen some of the bravest people we were willing to go send to go fight and die in these conflicts. And what else? What else do we have? We have the fact that, well, the conflicts that we're willing to go send these people to go fight and die in are the very things that are causing the nature of the internal corruption and the internal rot that is breaking down the structure of what was once the greatest country the world has ever known. Now, this is still a salvageable nation, and with it, excommunicating people like Nikki Haley from the sphere of debate and letting people know that we're no longer having that conversation, that of foreign wars to the tune of endless funding so that the military-industrial complex can consistently rake in billions upon billions of dollars. At what is the tune of that? What is the cost of that? Millions of lives. Look at how many people have died throughout the entirety of our involvement in the Middle East over the past 70 years, and you tell me any of it was fucking worth it. You look at the debt that we are saddled with, you look at the devaluation of the currency, and you tell me any of it was fucking worth it, because it absolutely wasn't. I'm going to go ahead and leave it here and throw it into Vivek for his closing statement where he talks about the nature of the new climate religion and the hoax that is the climate change scare. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. If you got something I can read that can counter me and tell me why I'm wrong and why the things I'm saying are incorrect, I will gladly go through it. But you actually have to provide it. Nonetheless, that's all you're going to see from me. Let's go ahead and throw it into Vivek. Stay lovely, stay great. Tell someone you love them. Peace out.
I'll use this to just address a topic we didn't talk about tonight, but I think is one of the most important topics that needs to be discussed. That is this climate change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said it at the first debate, and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That's what we have to see. 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones. Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who are about to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new god of climate, and that will end on my watch.
Thank
it's
you,
the most critical
Ambassador
issue
Haley.
that's coming up. Thank you.